Good morning, Inspiring Illuminators. It is me, Jennifer Engel, your highest possibility state subconscious coach. I was going to do a jaunt with Jen while I was actually jaunting. And it was really interesting when I've been thinking about a topic. I've usually been thinking about it, experimenting with it, playing with it for years. And then generally when I speak about it, it's a topic that becomes a little bit more clear, or it surfaces and it becomes almost like a record playing over and over until I actually release it out in the form of a jaunt. And when I was jaunting this morning, as you're going to see in my video that I'm going to loop as I play over this message, nature was still teaching me about this topic while I was jaunting. I started thinking about this topic, I've been kind of thinking, like I said, about this topic for probably years, meditating upon it, talking with the universe about it. And if you hear like pitter-patters in the background, this is how nature was still teaching me about the topic of the day. It is raining, it is pouring. The old man, I don't know if he's snoring. Anyway, the topic that really came to mind, I think this Thursday, the maybe 4 words that popped up was density devours where light frees. And this is something that I've really been thinking about and meditating upon. Maybe it popped up more because, as some of you may or may not know, my cancer has recurred again. And I spent some time, I think it was Thursday morning, really researching like breast cancer recurrence, possible treatments, all these things. And one of the things that I found, again, I am not a doctor, so this is just my own research for my own self, is that there's some really good results, findings from a scientific study that actually intermittent fasting, calorie reduction with the combination of hormone reduction therapy, there's some really good evidence there. Whenever I have gone through cancer or any medical issues, which I've had almost my whole life, like many of us, I will get into a really good pattern of eating and exercising. And then once the threat has gone away, I go back to old habits. So it's not really a surprise that the old threats keep popping up. One of the things that I've been thinking about, in addition to density devours, is focus. I am a huge advocate for the power of focus. Our world competes for our focus at an insane rate. With all of our phones setting off their alerts and everything, which is why I basically turned off all my notifications on my phone, and why I really only go to my phone like a few times a day. And I do that for many reasons, but that's not what this jaunt with Jen is supposed to be about. This jaunt with Jen is more about how density devours and light frees. What is density? If you even think about it, you can kind of see it in a couple different ways. Density is darkness. And if you think about it, the world is actually more dark than it is light. For half of the day, depending on where we live and all that other jazz and what time of season it is. So just for simplicity's sake, let's say in general, half of our day is devoured in darkness. But then even when it is light, if you go past our atmosphere and you head out into space, space is more dark than light. Now, I do think darkness has gotten a bad vibe, and I'm also going to address darkness in a different way. But let's just say darkness devours, density devours, and then in this same conversation, in a little bit later, I am going to talk about how darkness has gotten a bad name and how even in darkness we can experience lightness. I'm not actually talking about like a light in the dark. I'm talking about how darkness itself can be, if you want to think about it in weight terms, darkness can be light. Okay? All right. So how does that apply? So the way that I believe reality manifests is everything starts in our subconscious. Everything starts in the dark. Okay? And then we get a feeling about what we've stored there, an emotion, a judgment about what we have stored in our subconscious, in our darkness. And then that feeling, that judgment comes up to the surface of our mind, the processing center, and it creates a thought about what we have brought up or what does come up. And then I believe that thought exits our physical bodies into this three-dimensional reality, this physical reality. That's how I believe reality is manifested. If you don't believe, I'm not trying to convince anybody else how reality happens, okay? If you have your own beliefs, totally respect that. I'm just sharing mine. So I also believe it can go the other way around too. I believe in this physical reality, we experience sensory things from what we and or others or we have collectively created. That goes into our physical body. We have a thought about it. We judge that thought, which creates a feeling, and then we store it into our subconscious. So you see, I do believe it can work both ways. Okay? Now, in regard to specifically disease, dis-ease within our soul, I think it can do the same thing. I think in our soul, in our subconscious, we can experience dis-ease. Dis-ease to me comes from not feeling connected or loved or well cared for, or even seen or known. Okay? That distress comes up to our emotions, which could be anger, guilt, insecurity, sadness, depression, whatever. And then that emotion goes into our thoughts, and our thoughts say things like, I hate this person, I don't like this person, I hate this situation, my life is miserable, I feel guilty about. Sometimes we do negative self-talk, you're stupid, you're fat, you're ugly, so on and so forth. And then it comes out into our physical reality as experiences, because then the universe says, oh, this is what you think the world's going to be like, so I'm going to give you your expectations. It could also go the other way, right? We could experience positive or negative. You know, we could experience in our soul that we do feel love, that we do feel connected. And then an emotion comes up where we feel calm and content and all these other things. And we have thoughts that say, I am courageous, I'm brave, I'm strong, I am loved, I'm well connected, life is going well for me. And then the universe says, oh, that's what you expect is going to happen, so those are the experiences that I'm going to create for you. Now, some people might say, well, this person or whatever does everything right, they eat right, they whatever. But this is, I think, where the spiritual concept of you cannot live in two homes, or whatever that Bible quote is, comes into play. For me, I feel like my cancer recurred because my mind was split. I thought one situation was healthy and one was sick. In addition, I kind of told the universe, and I was, and I'll kind of get into this a little bit, I also do believe that the foods we eat, the experiences we participate in, also tell the universe where we are. Now, everyone's different, so that's going to be different for everybody. There is no right or wrong, per se. Well, I mean, there is, but again, not going to get into those details. So, specifically, what I've been thinking about is food. Food is density. Another way to look at density is that one way someone described it is density is matter. Density is physical things. Okay? Food is physical things. Food matters. And because we are matter, we do need to consume other matter so that our matter can continue living. Now, with that said, it's how much matter do we consume? In nature, there is always a balance. But man has, through its ego, through its creativity, and again, ego is not always bad, but it can be if it overconsumes. Okay? So in nature, everything is a delicate balance and is provided for. There are some times in nature where Mother Nature will not provide water for food or for like trees and plants and whatever. And the purpose is for it to grow roots deeper into the earth. On a human level, there may be times you feel disconnected from God or Source. And the purpose is to grow roots deeper into your faith to go and find it again. And that actually makes you stronger. Okay, same with the trees. I've been watching Survivor and thinking about, tribal peoples. There are times where Mother Nature, through humans, makes food scarce, makes us fast. I also saw a documentary on the Amazon people, and they would purposefully fast for 2 days before they went on the hunt. Because what they found is when they fasted, they were lighter, they were faster, and they were more mentally accurate, so that when they actually did go hunt, they could catch more food. Okay? In America and other parts of the world, we take in too much density. And I think that's why we have so much dis-ease within our body and probably our souls. We just take too much. We have forgotten about the law of nature. And the other thing that was pointed out to me through a different podcast is that all the major religions of the world have a fasting practice. The Native Americans, when you used to do your journey You would fast for 2 or 3 days on the mountain to get your purpose. Because you can hear more when you're not as dense. There's Ramadan, where for like 30 days or so, people fast from sunrise to sunset, so on and so forth. Now, people can tell you these are the days you should fast, and there's actually like benefits to that. Your body, when it doesn't have food, says, okay, let's go into going in, breaking down what we already have in our body, and consuming it. So if you have disease in your body consumes the disease. And then when your body gets nutrients and density and things back in its body, then it says, okay, we can rebuild. But now it's rebuilding without the dis-ease within your body. Again, you have to be really careful. I'm not a doctor. Okay. I was really just kind of thinking about this from a spiritual but also a physical aspect. I've noticed this as well. When I eat too much, I feel lethargic. I feel shut down. The same thing is true, like when I sit too long, I get tired. And it's really ironic. If you eat light, you feel light. If you move, a body in motion stays in motion, right? A body at rest stays at rest. So my quote today is that density devours. It makes things really, really heavy. I think that's also why there is a trend. Instead of getting children and people toys and physical things, to give them experiences. Okay, because density devours. It imprisons us. It holds us down. It chains us. But light sets us free. It creates movement. It creates education. It creates lightheartedness. Okay? So, I also said I was going to come back around and say how darkness isn't always dense. Again, I've said that darkness is simply our subconscious. And I've also experienced some of the most peace within the dark. Because what did I do? I have spent the last 10 years or so clearing the density from the darkness. Every morning, I am very focused on my spiritual subconscious practice of scanning my subconscious for anything negative, from transforming it, from script flipping it by practicing mindfulness, meditation, visualization, and script flipping. I talk about it all the time. If I can remember, I'll put a link in the video below. I have then focused on my relationships. If they were negative, if there was density, if there was heaviness in them. And now I'm writing my third book called Communication Codes. Because I honestly believe that communication creates connection. And if you want your relationships to stop being so heavy, you need to communicate. And you need to script flip what the relationship looks like, sounds like, feels like. But with that said, both people have to be willing to do that. If both people aren't willing to do it, it's not going to work. Okay? So I've been spending a lot of time, probably the last 2 or 3 years, focusing on the emotional piece. And I'm actually pretty focused on it now. I'm pretty stable in that area. I spent the past lifetime, probably more specifically 10 to 12 years, educating myself on spiritual things, emotional things. That's where highest possibility states came from. So now is the year for me Because again, I believe everything manifests from the soul to the emotion, to the mind, to the physical. Now that my subconscious is stable and I've cleared the density from my darkness, I made it light. Now that I cleared the density from many of my relationships, now that I have cleared the density from my mind, now it's time to clear the density from my body. You know, when I first heard that I might have cancer again and that it recurred, I, like every other time, thought the worst. Oh my God, I only have a year to live, blah, blah, blah. And it's okay. We need to walk through our emotions. I talk about that all the time. You have to walk through the density. You have to walk through the darkness. If you don't, it's always going to be in front of you and it's always going to control you. But if you have the darkness and the density behind you, or even better yet, like Soul sold us, that little silly Pixar Disney movie, if you can walk into the density and darkness and transform it into light, then it's going to be the wind behind you pushing you forward. And what I can say is no matter how dark, even though I walk through the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Even though the cancer is recurring for a third time, I shall not fear. Because the universe is always talking with me. Even when I think about these things, it was so funny. There was light on one side of me, as you're going to see in the video, and there was darkness on the other side. The clouds were dark and dense, but they became light by releasing it, which was the rain all over me, which is the picture that I'll show probably before and after the video of me standing in my sunroom soaked. As a side note, if you've never taken a walk in the rain or you haven't done it for a long time, I would highly recommend it. My husband did come out to try to find me to save me from my wet journey, but I told him no because, like, thank you, you know. But it really makes your senses come alive. It's one of those things that make you feel glad to be alive, to take a walk in the warm rain. So if you haven't done that for a while, I highly recommend it. It's also been really humid and hot here in Illinois. Dense humidity, dense heat. And again, the rain is coming, the wind is coming to blow it away and make it light. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about, where is the density in your life right now? You can start on the surface if that's easier for you. Have you been eating too much? Have you not been moving enough? How could you lighten up a little bit? You know, people do say that a plant-based diet is a good way to go, but I also know there's lots of carnivores out there, and everyone has a different body and a different system, okay? But, you know, think about, have you been eating too much, and could you lighten up a little bit? Have you been sitting a little too much, and so you need to move and lighten up a little bit? What about your mind? Is it weighed down by anxiety and worry? How can you lighten that up a little bit? Maybe it's through mindfulness, meditation, visualization. Maybe it's through talking with a counselor. Okay, how can you lighten up your mind? What about your emotions? What about your relationships? When you are with people, do they make you feel heavy and dense? Or do they make you feel light? And if they make you feel heavy and dense, then go back to those questions that I often tell people to ask. Does this or these relationships need a tune-up? Where if just this person and I did something a little different, it would be a little bit more light? Does it need an overhaul, where maybe we need some outside help to get this relationship to lighten up and flip around? Or does it need a timeout or a trade-in? And then, if all of those things are pretty light for you, the next challenge is to find some quiet time every day. I often say that most people can't stand the quiet because they've shoved a lot of shit into their subconscious. They put a lot of density in there. And so if you can't handle sitting still and being dark and quiet, start with a moving meditation. Running or jogging, but don't put on music with words. Put on music without words and focus on your breathing and your movement. And even when you're doing that, you might find kind of like, if you have still water and you put a stick in it and you stir it up, you might find some things floating to the surface. Okay? There's many ways to meditate. But the point is that you can't have other distractions. You're focused on self. Self-movement or not movement, self-breath, self-sounds. Okay? Another way that to do this is to actually have the same sounds on each day, because that cues your brain. This is what we're doing right now. Every morning I listen to the same meditation music because it cues my brain and I can go into deep subconscious pretty quickly, because my brain is cued by the music. So that's another tip and strategy. Also, thinking about the physical, it doesn't even have to be your own physical body. Look around your house, look around your environmental surroundings. Do you have too much shit around you? Too much clutter? Sometimes another good way to clear the clutter, to lighten the density, is to clean. I used to do that every day in my classroom too. You can have some pretty intense experiences working with a wide variety of children. And so to me, it was just like a mental wipe down the desks every day, wipe down anything that might have happened, so you're creating a fresh new space. Another way I like to wipe down the density, if it has been a really hard day, is I do something called reset. I kind of have in my mind that at midnight, like Cinderella, the clock resets. And so I have a chance to, all the density's gone from the day before. More often than not at work, sometimes some of the density carries over. But I have found that when I do my 3 to 5 habits that I do every day, by the time I'm done with my habit, I'm generally pretty clear and free of the density. So today's quote is, "Density devours where lightness frees." And so I'm just having you think about what is some density in your life that you can lighten up a little bit in order to become a bit more free. I hope that this talk has helped somebody today, so you can use your own tips and strategies about how you lighten up your life to first help yourself and then to help others around you. Because now, more than ever, the world needs it and it needs you. And the rain is slowly coming to an end at this talk. The sky is starting to lighten up. And I think at the end of this video, what I'm going to put is the rainbow. God's covenant with us, that it's the bridge that we walk across from guilt to courage. From fear to courage, from guilt to acceptance, from insecurity to confidence, from anger and jealousy into compassion and understanding, from lies to truth, and from misperception to clear perception. May you find your rainbow and teach others how to find their own. Peace and blessings.